Everyone, welcome to another episode of Crypt of the Unknown, the Depression Recordings. I'm here with my special guest.
Hello.
And this is Nabil. Nabil is going to be joining me today to talk about some of his depression and some of the things he does to quell it. The whole point of the show, in case anyone has never listened to it before, is simply to let other people discuss kind of what they've gone through, some of the hardships, some of the turmoil. Let our listeners know that there's ways around it, that they're not the only ones going through depression, and that just to keep holding on and stay strong. And that's basically the whole point of the show. And for anyone who also hasn't listened to the first recording, which will have come out before this one, there are questionnaires. There's just 10 questions we ask our guests. They already know what they are so that they can feel comfortable coming on the show. And we'll just go ahead and start off with Nabil here. The first question, of course, is when did you first experience depression?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I first had kind of my experience with depression was right around the age of 17. For me, I was definitely kind of a type A person in high school. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I wanted to do all these things. And while it's really good to have kind of those ambitions and goals, what was really not great is that I was putting on so much stress onto myself and isolating from others. I had a really stressful time in my life, kind of family-wise at that moment. And so the pressures that I put on myself combined with just kind of the pressures from outside the family really made me almost kind of crack in a way, not to sound like stereotypical, but it really was my experience of kind of feeling down, like really down. And since then, it's kind of been an on and off battle from, the age of 17 onward for kind of my life since.
Right. And how, I guess, like to elaborate more, what were the family problems, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, in terms of, what I'm comfortable talking about, it was just a lot of like, my brother was really struggling with ADHD and also things like kind of the school to prison pipeline. So, he's a person of color and he was immediately seen as a problem child. So it was kind of this loop of he would get in trouble in school and my parents would say, hey, man, why'd you get in trouble in school? And then he'd act out and then kind of this cycle would happen back and forth. And on top of it, just familial divorce and things like that. So it was a lot of just kind of tension in the household. And I really wanted to isolate from that. But at the same time, that isolation can also be a breeding ground for depression, whether or not you realize it.
Yeah, like I've always treated isolation like it can work for you, it can work against you. And in my case, like obviously, like when I work on projects, including like the channel here, I use isolation, of course, to get it done because there's no other way to do it, like writing, drawing, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that's the only time it's a commodity. Outside of that, if you're just sitting there doing nothing, probably not a good thing.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important to distinguish between kind of isolation and me time, right? So everyone's going to have a different level of self time that they need for personal boundaries, for being able to recharge. I'm an extrovert, so I really feed off of other people. But at the same time, if I've been out 2-3 days in a row, I need that fourth day, that third day to recharge, right?
Right.
So I think there's a difference between that and, it's been 3 weeks and I see maybe 2 people.
Yeah.
That's as with the pandemic going on, like we're sadly all too familiar with it, but that's very much kind of a different level that I think I would want people to be wary of.
Yeah, and they're like the 2 people that you like saw when you opened your blinds and said, forget it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. So age 17, how did you know you were depressed at age 17, like that first experience?
Yeah, so I would say that I picked up as depression because I noticed I was, I was sleeping in a lot, like I was very fatigued, and I kind of lost interest in things. I found myself irritable, which for me was kind of rare. My family kind of presents symptoms as kind of atypical depression. So what that means is like more crabbiness than pure sadness.
Right.
as you like to think about, because sadness and depression are very similar, but they're not a one-to-one kind of synonym for each other.
Right.
So, I would see, I'd sit down in my room, I'd do homework, and everything just felt kind of grayish and blah, and I just felt kind of sad. Eventually it got so bad that I started having suicidal thoughts, which I'd never had before. So, I mean, at that point I was like, okay, something's clearly wrong. I got to figure this out.
Yeah, that would definitely trigger me if I was in that same position. For instance, like getting suicidal thoughts, like question 2 here, like what did you do then to suppress like all the depression you were experiencing on the offset right there? And then like what do you do now in any way to like do the same thing?
Yeah, good question. So back then what I did was I isolated. So and not just isolate, but I used like escapism, So for me, it was video games, right? Video games is something I always liked, and video games is something where I didn't have to interact with other people necessarily. So like, for example, I had started playing League of Legends, Civilization, Hearthstone, all sorts of different games on PC, on whatever. And it was me on my laptop with my headphones in, and I was physically removing myself from any kind of fighting that might be going on in the house or any kind of arguing or tension. And then when I was at school, I still kept to myself, and not kept to myself. I was still myself, so to speak, and that helped things because I had friends, I had activities, but I definitely noticed myself feeling a disconnect, having a harder time keeping friends, kind of all of those things. So to kind of summarize that part was, a lot of music, a lot of video games, a lot of really whatever I could do to keep busy, to keep my mind off that. And then as an adult, I've learned a lot better techniques. Not saying that, music and video games are bad, but everything in moderation, right? Everything in a healthy amount. So for me, it's I go to therapy as often as I can. I actually just started up with a new therapist, which I'm really excited about. I swear that every adult, whether or not you have depression, don't have depression, regardless of your mental health status, treat it like your physical health. If you see a doctor once a year, go to a therapist once a year, if you can, obviously with money and insurance. But if you're able to, I highly vouch for that. I'm on medications, which has helped a lot. I had developed panic attacks in college, which was no fun. And that's helped tremendously with the panic. Making sure to get good sleep, good hygiene, life skills. So like, are you sleeping 7 to 9 hours, with no electronics before bed? Are you, eating healthy meals? Are you seeing people? Are you getting enough sunshine? We're kind of like plants with, humans are kind of like plants, but with sentience. We need water, we need sunshine.
We need League of Legends.
Yeah. So I still do a lot of the stuff that I did back then, but I have a better awareness of how those things impact me.
Right. That makes total sense. Is it, and I brought up League of Legends too, because like, is it weird for me to think of that game as like the perfect depression game? Like you could just get so locked into that and just for hours just lose yourself.
It very much is, honestly. I don't think that's weird at all. I have a very mixed relationship with that video game because it's genuinely fun and enjoyable, and I have a lot of positive memories with it. But at the same time, I consider Riot Games to be pretty predatory about stuff. And obviously the community is very toxic. And so it brought out the best in me. It's brought out the worst in me. It's like kind of like a long estranged relationship I have with that game.
That makes sense, actually.
But yeah, for me, what I do now is I'll put on, first I only schedule like an hour or two a day. Like I make sure everything else is done before I play games, whereas the other time it's just I play games because I want to play games, right? But it's like, okay, now I have a responsibility list, which is tough, but I know it's important for me.
Right.
So I only play when I have free time, and then I put on some music or a podcast. So and typically something pretty chill, like a lo-fi or R&B or something like that. And I mute the heck out of the community, like instantly. I have like a 1-strike rule. The second anyone gives me a reason to like feel on edge, they're muted. And then I can just focus on the game itself, which is fun. That's why I play. So with that approach, it becomes much more manageable and much more of a pleasant experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did that I started doing that in Overblood this year. It was just like anyone gives me grief. It's just like, all right, block. I can't deal with it. Not this year, not last year even, or the past 4 years. There's just too much going on for that stuff. And, I understand like people have like high feelings about stuff, but there's like a good typical way to handle it rather than like the cliche, you're right or you're wrong and I'm right because I say so,
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
2016 was kind of my breaking point with social media. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll tie it back to mental health.
Sure.
So for me, I'm biracial. I grew up Muslim. I'm Arab, kind of all these identifiers. And so for me growing up, it was really difficult post 9/11 in America. But I viewed it as someone who's very white passing, like a person of color who's very white passing.
Mm-hmm.
I viewed it as, I kind of got to reach across the aisle, almost like an Obama-esque kind of thing, where it's like, I can communicate these progressive ideas or like the thoughts of my brown side of the family with my white side of the family and be like the good Muslim, which is that phrase now. But
Right.
I tried and tried and tried, and just truly it's like talking to a brick wall. And so and obviously you can cut all this out if it's not the theme of the podcast.
No, it's okay. It's totally fine.
Cool, because I appreciate this. And
Yeah.
so once 2012 or not 2012, sorry, 2016 hit, I just like realized that me trying to like hear out different sides, like no one's listening to what I had to say in terms that was like already Republican or whatever, conservative. So once that hit, like I just hit that block button on anyone that like I was not a fan of, and it has done wonders for my mental health. Oh my gosh. Like I went from like dreading Facebook and just getting into arguments all the time to like actually enjoying my experience on there. And same with Twitter and everything. Like it's been so wonderful. I have half of Overblood blocked just because like they either annoy me or they're like completely different politically, and it is wondrous.
I should point out to everyone, Overblood is a group I think we've mentioned on the channel before. It's called I Watched the Entire Overblood Super Replay. It's got a long, ridiculous title. It's slightly has ties connected to Game Informer magazine. It's about a show they did called Replay and a game they played on it, and people passionately felt about it. So anyways, that's where we all met each other.
Yep.
And it's at times a very, very amazing group, and at other times it can get slightly off kilter. But it's always been a place of home for me over the past decade. I don't know. How long have you been there, Nabil?
So I wasn't kind of the first wave. I was probably year 3, I think, of it being up. So like I was kind of that second wave. So like there were still like some of the OGs in there for sure, and there was still some of like kind of the original drama. I know most of the memes, but I wasn't like one of the first 500 by any means. So
Okay. Yeah.
I've been in since about 2014, 2013.
Okay. I think I was one of the first 150, and that was
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been there quite a while, and I've like seen all the drama. But anyways,
I was busy with on a quick tangent here. I was busy with the blogging section at Game Informer. I did that a lot in 2011 and 2012. Like I wrote there a lot, and then I would watch Replay every Saturday, and then I love the Overblood, the Blue Stinger, all those, and then I would see the group or hear about it, and I was like so scared to even like join.
Yeah.
And then I joined, and I was like, all right, but I'm glad I joined now, and I'm glad that it's a much more enjoyable place. The last few, like I'm thankful I met like you and other friends on there. So.
Oh yeah, thanks. And it's you're not wrong for like feeling that way, because when it first started, and I want to say even this first couple of years, it was just like wow, like anything goes. Like it was an outlaw fucking town for a while. But yeah, and as far as I've seen, like because there's plenty of side groups for Overblood, like over politics. I know somebody had mentioned that they left at the same time as you because, as you were saying earlier about like certain values, like whether it's religious or people that are conservative and so on and so forth, it seemed to be that like people weren't progressively pushing to understand each other in the group for a while. And I know that like Christians, people who were Christians had Christian values, or any sort of religion, like people were getting toxic towards it in various skewed terms and like views, and I didn't understand it. And obviously the group's gotten better, but I know you had left at some point. Did you feel like that was probably one of those places where people were just bashing you because of maybe your ethnicity or your culture or anything?
I don't think everyone's ever bashed me because of my ethnicity or culture. A, because I think at least on that regard, people were chill enough, and B, because I wouldn't allow it. If they did, I'd either like argue back or block them.
Yeah,
but
most people get banned anyway.
Yeah, I do remember, like, I currently identify as agnostic, but I grew up Muslim, and I still actually have a lot of respect for Islam.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was really difficult, as I was at a personal time of questioning religion, and so and part of the reason why I was questioning it was because of just constant hatred towards Islam from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just everything was like, why do you like this religion? They're homophobic, they're this, they're that. And it was just really hard because it was something that was still really personal, but even if I didn't agree with the homophobia or whatever, right? But it still was what I knew. It's what I'd grew up with. It's where I knew that the community was very peaceful, and that there was still it's more of a complex issue than just boiled down to like, this sucks, this is a negative thing. And I think kind of the term like militant atheism, where people are like, oh man, I'm an atheist, so all religions are trash.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really subscribe to that. And in fact, I find it kind of disrespectful. I get where people come from with it. I understand the hurt that can be caused by religion. But I think whatever someone's beliefs are, as long as it's not hurting another person directly, just be respectful. And I didn't feel respected of my beliefs, and so that's why I had to take a break from that group.
That makes a lot of sense. I even think of atheism, even Satanism, as their own religions in a way, because they're celebrating. Yeah, they're like celebrating their own not belief in something that others believe in, and it's just maddening to think about, because I'm also an agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but like part of the reason why I identify as an agnostic obviously is because it's like, there's a God, and it's like, well, where? He's like, well, he's there. It's like, I don't see him, but like, I don't want to like not say that he's not there. It's just, I don't know. I can't make up my mind on it. you know?
No, I totally feel it. I identify as agnostic only because I look at math and science, the way the sun rises and sets, the way that, nature is so beautiful, the way like mathematics equations work out. And I think there has to be a reason for that. For me personally, I assign reason to it. I'm like, what's at the edge of the universe, right? What's past that? And that's where I personally find a creator. But at the same time, I look at like, the Gaza Strip. I look at war crimes. I look at all these things that are happening. I'm like, how can a creator be so cruel?
Right.
So it's a difficult thing. But I think as long as people approach interfaith dialogue, and I'm including like atheism and Satanism in this, I think with respect, I think that's just be a good person, just I think that's what we all want from one another.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, just because you celebrate something else, like if I celebrate chocolate and you celebrate vanilla, it's like you don't have to hate me.
Just don't get vanilla or don't get chocolate.
Yeah, just don't get it. Like it's fine. But it's such a tangent. It was a good one though. I'm glad we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like in encountering all these difficult situations, like things you've had to overcome, obviously. Now we've talked about religion. Like when you tried to suppress your depression, and as you've said, you've like managed your time, you've gone to the gym, which I really appreciate because that definitely helps with my depression. Have you ever done anything that didn't work for you, that you felt like, oh, I got to do this to help my depression, but it didn't work?
Sorry, could you repeat that question one more time?
Sure. So like, did you ever do anything that you tried to do to quell your depression, but you found out that it didn't work for you? In fact, it was like maybe a negative or something.
Yeah, I would say that's a good question. I would say that in general, working out is really not something that's helped my depression,
Oh,
which I know
wow.
is sacrilege. I know that's because for a lot of people it is, and I'm not saying don't do it for people. I'm saying it's like, it's still a really good thing. So here's context. I was really athletic in high school, and still in the first 3 years of my depression, I was still very active, and it didn't really cure anything. And then I wasn't active, and then this past fall, I did 4 months of 5 days a week, working out, eating healthy, and it did nothing.
Wow.
So for me personally, it hasn't touched my depression. I still, eat your veggies and go work out. It's still good for people. But just I wanted to give that experience of maybe someone else is feeling the same.
Right, definitely. And do you feel like it was just because like being healthy wasn't enough, or like it just had zero impact on your mental depression or anything? Your mental state.
No, it just had zero impact. It wasn't a good or a bad.
Wow.
I was just like, okay, well, I'm in slightly better shape, but I still feel sad.
I mean, that's super interesting to me.
I know, it's so rare. People like I've had maybe one or two other people agree with me, but everyone else is like, you're crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, that sucks. I wish it helped more, because I know, like, for me, like going to the gym, and like it's a tough thing to eat right. That's like 90% of the journey, really. But I try to eat healthy at least 4 times a week, and then the other 3, it's like, I gotta live a little. But but yeah, going to the gym, like especially for me, because like I used to drink a lot and I used to smoke, and I've quit smoking for 30 days so far. Let's keep that train going. But
Yeah, it's awesome.
but yeah, but like when I get out of the gym, for me, what it feels like is it almost like feels like I'm younger in a way. Like I feel younger, and in doing so, like my brain feels younger as well. And like I feel like as I got older, I don't know about you, for some reason depression, like that's when it came along, and we hit depression at the same age, 17. So I just don't know, like there's something mentally for me, like that's how my journey gets out of it. Like my progression is it's just like I feel younger, and for some reason that makes me feel less depressed. I don't know, and like I just feel healthier. But it's still interesting to me that you haven't gotten that yet, or haven't gotten that at all.
Yeah, I would say I'll do kind of a mix of things that have worked and haven't worked, if that's okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I think, while the exercise and that kind of hasn't worked for me, on the flip side, what has worked is regulating my sleep. So when I'm very much naturally a night owl, on top of, I'm very much a gamer. And so those two things, lead to me being up at hours where I shouldn't be up, right? So on days where I regulate my sleep, I'm up by 10 a.m. at the earliest, I'm in bed by 1 a.m. at the latest, pretty normal working hours.
Yeah.
I feel much better than on days where I'm asleep at 5 a.m. and I'm up at 3 p.m.
Hey, me and you both.
Yep. So my sleep schedule has been all over the place, but that's something where I notice a direct correlation between my mood and what, kind of what my environment is. I will say that also diet does make a difference for me. It's a small one, but it's there. Exercise, not as much, but diet for sure. I notice, like, junk food's a vice for me. So if I've had, 4 meals or 5 meals a week that is fast food, I feel like crap about myself, and that makes me feel sad. Whereas if I've ate healthy, there's that kind of nice, like, oh, I feel good about myself in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. I have a friend who eats, like, we chat online on PSN all the time, and he's just like, yeah, I'm warming up pizza, I'm warming up like taquitos, and warming up. I'm like, dude, no wonder you're sad and depressed all the time. You need to eat better, So you're right about that.
Yeah. Video games is very hit or miss. Being able to socialize with friends and being able to have a game that I enjoy makes me feel better. But when I am neglecting other tasks to play, and or if I've had a bad experience, maybe I'm not clicking with my friends that well, or, maybe I, had a toxic community or I played bad or something like that, then it makes me feel worse. So it's very hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try and be careful to make sure that it doesn't control my whole day. It doesn't make it better or ruin it by how 2 hours of video game playing went.
Right. Would you say like now, like what are the things that you would say like the top 5 things? Like what do you do now? All the things that you would say like help belittle like your depression, that keep you, more sane, I should say.
Yes. Yeah. So good question, because I know I can kind of go on a tangent. So for me, for context for the listener, so 2017 and 2018 in particular was a really bad time for me. I was in an inpatient care facility, which no shame, if you got to do it, I actually recommend it. It probably saved my life. I was in there
100%.
twice.
Okay.
And so I'm glad to say I've been hospital free for 3 years, which is huge. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm doing a lot, even if I still have like struggles, I'm doing a lot better mental health wise.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that means a lot. I've worked hard on it. I would say the biggest changes, I would say number one is environmental. And it kind of sucks because you can't always control your environment, but my God, does environment play a huge part in mental health.
I agree.
I finally had a stable housing situation. My parents, we talked about mental health and that went really well. Just everything in terms of support. I'm so lucky and privileged and thankful for my mom and dad and friends who have been so understanding, and coworkers and bosses and everything I've been so lucky to have that. And I wish everyone can have that because it makes such a huge difference in mental health. So I went from stressing about college and what is my next bill going to be, and, kind of relationship issues and family issues and all this kind of stuff, to like, okay, I have a house that I feel safe in. I have people I can go to talk to, and I can take space if I need space. And if I'm, $50 behind for a month instead of being punished, I'm really lucky that I can call a family member and say, or a friend and say, hey, like, can you help a brother out?
Right.
That's a privilege to have, but it makes a world of difference for mental health.
I agree. I mean, when you have like valuable commodities like that in your life, it's always good to have something to lean on just in case, almost as an insurance to, getting through the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely have some of those in my own life. So it's good to hear. I guess we should back it up a little bit because because going back to like you being at age 17 and you got that first wave, we should say, of depression. Yeah. As you went on, like what would you say were like the more severe ones? Because you start at a certain point, you're like, okay, I'm depressed. Like I mentally just feel drained.
Yeah.
And as you go on and progress, like what would you say, in succession, like what were your kind of experiences?
Yeah. What I was going to answer to this, and let me know if you're cool with this, is I was going to kind of just do a year by year breakdown.
Yeah, do it. Totally.
Yeah, so 17 and 18, I was at the end of high school. I was still living at home. And for me, it was just like isolating, not really talking about it except with my therapist, still feeling stigmatized about it and just kind of like keeping it to myself, which wasn't good. I was safe because I still felt hopeful, but I was just like, I was just tired of everything, man. I felt like I was doing everything right, but I was still getting punished for it, so to speak. That was kind of my mentality, my mind frame. I get to college, and my first year of college, I completely just avoided. Avoidance is kind of the stage of life I was in. I was angry, and I just avoided everything. I was in my room 24/7 playing video game. Like that was the peak of my video game playing, where I was playing like 14, 15 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, when people talk about like video game addiction, things like that, I will vouch and say it's a real thing. Just like you can get addicted to anything, but like, that stimulus, that hit of one more win, or that hit of, okay, I opened up a loot box, can I get a new skin or crate or something like that? Those dopamine rushes, I mean, really to me was something where like I wouldn't shower because I'd play another video game and I didn't have the energy to shower. It was really bad. So I would say that's kind of how that 2015, 2016 was. And then, somehow by the grace of God, I ended up in a relationship.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was something where, I started up therapy again, and I found a bit of healing. I was still in the midst of just kind of struggling because it had been so long since I had good habits. So it almost became like kind of encrusted, encased, solidified that depression, so to speak.
Yeah, like the second nature of just doing like everything
inertia.
Habitually.
Yeah, the inertia. It had been my habits because I've been doing it for 3 years. So now at this point I start getting healing, but I realized how far I still had to go. So I did therapy. I was able to travel a little bit. I had good talks with friends, relationship, family members, etc. And once and I learned a lot of skills from that. So it's like, okay, what does because I never really thought about sleep hygiene or what that looks like. I didn't think about, how, I might not be as healthy as I viewed myself. Because even when I was playing games and stuff, I didn't view myself as unhealthy. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just a college kid playing games. But I realized, and I was like, wow, no, I'm really sick and I'm in a really sick place.
Right. I mean, like, granted, I've had some of those long days, like when Resident Evil game comes out, I'm like 10 hours in, I'm like, all right, I gotta go to sleep. But like 14, 15 hours, like
per day, every day, like solidly, like not once a month when a new release comes out.
Those are not rookie numbers.
No, it was very much like the South Park World of Warcraft. I mean, I was like, I gotta go pro. I'm gonna do I was intense about it. So
yeah, you're like, Mom, bathroom.
Fortunately,
I guess this is college. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, it was really rough. And so, I was really sick, and I really struggled with a lot of that. It was really until I came back home in 2018. So 2018, I ended up dropping out of college because my mental health was so bad. So 2016, 2017, I started healing, but then I realized still how far I have to go and the pressures of college. And I at this point, I had been failing classes. So
that's heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of college. And as someone like myself who was like a straight A student, I'm like, I'm a failure. I have no hope. I have so much student debt. Like, what am I going to do? That's where I started to be hopeless. And when you're hopeless in depression, that's really dangerous because as long as you have hope that tomorrow can be better, there's like a reason to live. There's like a safety net.
Right.
But when you don't have that hope, when you're hopeless, then it becomes really dangerous for anyone.
Yeah. It's like when people, like most people who commit suicide, and I should mention this too as a PSA, like if anyone's feeling suicidal listening to this, like always call your suicide hotline. It's just one Google click away. But most people who do feel like suicidal, it's because, as you're saying, like, I mean, like they really don't feel like they have a way out other than death. Like there's nothing left except for dying. Like that is it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For me, it was less of a, I want to do this because I was terrified of death, but it was more of a living was so miserable and I wanted to escape.
Mm-hmm.
So I would often say, I want to escape this. I want to escape this. I want to escape this. I want to not be here in a present moment, mindful of what's going on and kind of starting the work to fix that because it was so painful and so much inertia and so difficult that I wanted to escape how I was feeling.
Right. The daunting task.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing with a lot of almost like addictive behaviors, right? I want to escape how I'm feeling by indulging and distracting my brain with whatever kind of thing is going on, right? So that's something that, is a pattern that's seen often in mental health. So to finish it up here too, really quick, at least in terms of not overall, but just this question is, so 2018, 2017, I had been kicked out of school. Like I had failed and was just in a really, really bad place. My relationship was over and that was really ugly. And I had failed out of school and I go, oh my gosh, like, but what was really helpful is my family was like, yo, like, we like, you're not a failure to us. Like, you can go back. School will still be there for you. And I had put my family's, I mean, I'm very thankful for them. I had put so much pressure on myself to be like, I got to be this straight A guy, that I didn't allow room for like human nature to happen, right? For human life to occur. So, yeah.
I guess I can see what you're saying. Like, you just almost overworked yourself, maybe? Is that what you mean?
I just put too much pressure on myself. Like, it's good to have high goals, but what's important is it's good to know that, like, how can I explain this? Because it's good to set the bar high, you know, kind of like the aim for the stars, and if you miss, you at least hit the moon, kind of, so to speak.
Right. That's a lot of pressure, Nabil.
It is. I put so much pressure on myself. I literally was like, I'm gonna be the first like Arab president. Like, that's how much pressure I put on myself.
Yeah.
Like anything less than that would be a failure.
Right. And I totally
insane.
get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do a little of both. Like, I'll have some things where I know I have to set the bar high, and then like everything else I set the bar low, because it's easy to get over low bars, right? And you always feel good, like you said, the dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm kind of surprised you went the distance on that, because that's rough, man. Like, I don't think I could do that either.
Yeah, I had one thing that was really important to me, like a skill that's really important that I hope anyone listening takes away, is setting, like, knowing how to goal set and not having black and white thinking. Those are two huge kind of paradigm shifts for me in my thought process. So not having black and white thinking and switching to progress. So black and white thinking in mental health terms is yes or no, failure or success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's in reality, healing is not linear. Healing is not one day's good, the next day's better, and the next day's better. Because if it was, the way we look at life would be a lot different. If everyone's next day outer would be so better. I mean, like, 95-year-olds be rolling around in a harem with $1 billion if everyday life got better.
It's true.
It's just not how it works. It's not. Some days are good, some days are bad. Some days, some days I'm kicking butt at something. And what that did is it allowed me to fail, and learning to fail has been one of the best things for my mental health. So, like, I would do really well and then I'd do bad, but then I'd say, hey, I can't change the past. The only thing I can control is the present. Right. That's the only thing I have in front of me, is like, what is in the present moment? What can I do? And once I did that, I was like, okay, this is much more manageable. And setting good goals, like, if I set a goal of I'm gonna read a book a day, there's no way in heck I'm gonna do that. I'm just not at that place. Right? I'm not Ty Lopez in my garage. Like, that's just not me. not
Is he the guy who's like, oh hey,
yeah,
that's just my car? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just not me. So I have to set realistic, attainable goals, because if I look at a goal sheet and I'm like, I'm gonna read a book a day, I'm gonna feel like shit because I didn't read a book a day because I set that goal. So I have to set realistic goals of I'm gonna read a chapter a day, right? And if I hit that dopamine hit of, heck yeah, I did it, I achieved my goal, that makes me feel good. That's been a huge paradigm shift of, and those are things that I learned in therapy. Those are things that I'm really thankful for. So, like, changing the black and white thinking into a growth mentality, and then setting realistic, achievable goals has been huge for helping me. So right now it's like, okay, my room is messy. That doesn't mean that I failed because my room is a mess. It just means that I was not at that place at that moment. What it does mean is that tomorrow I can clean my room. And if I can't, then I need to look at my goals and figure out why I'm not able to, right? So if it's 4 days and I haven't cleaned my room, what is my goal? I'm going to put one piece of clothing up. As small as that, I'm going to put one piece of clothing up. And what I find is that once you get that momentum going, as small as it needs to be, then you can actually, like, find that it's not too bad.
Yeah, and you almost kind of, like, start to get into those types of things. And, like you're saying, cleaning your room, cleaning your room and your room getting dirty are much like depression and happiness. They're both temporary things.
And they're all tied to each other. I mean,
yeah.
Your room's messy, you're going to be feeling sad, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-to-one correlation, generally speaking.
Right. I work in chaos and I love it. But yeah, it's true. The more you clean up anything, you're just going to genuinely feel better, whether it's your body, your bad habits, anything. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. Tackling all those things, like, did you feel like there were any new challenges that have popped up in your life that you've had to deal with? Like the last thing that you can remember maybe where you're like, that sucked and I had to deal with that.
Yeah, it's a three-parter. I think one is COVID and the pandemic. When COVID hit, I was working 2 part-time jobs in retail. I was so proud of myself because it was the most I'd held down a job. And I was making so much progress with that. Mm-hmm. And I was feeling pretty good and I was socializing. And then the pandemic hits and I lose my jobs and I lose my socialization.
That can be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. COVID's been a mental health disaster on a huge level, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of how that's affected people.
Mm-hmm.
The second part is medication. So my medication, I'm on 20 milligrams of Lexapro. And what that does is it has completely knocked out my panic. So I used to go to the hospital, I kid you not, every other night at minimum, thinking I was going to die that night. It was terrifying because my panic disorder was so bad. When I started Lexapro, within 5 days, I didn't have that once.
Wow.
I'm so thankful that has made me actually able, because I just simply could not function. You can't live life when you're in the hospital that often and think you're going to die. So it at least brought back my ability to live. But the downside of it is it makes me very fatigued, and it gives me really bad, really vivid visual nightmares.
Wow, that's like a toss-up between what do you want more,
It is. It has been. I've been talking with my psychiatrist about all these kind of things. So I am like, I don't want to go off my medication because I don't want the panic to come back. But at the same time, learning how to deal with depression while I'm also struggling with sleeping and feeling fatigued.
Okay.
It's been a new battle of learning kind of medication and side effects and all those things.
Right. And you're not the only one. I mean, kind of like I said, the whole point of the show is people sharing so other people can know that they're not alone. And, when you talk about Lexapro and having vivid bad nightmares, I actually have a family member who took Lexapro and had the same exact experience.
It's so crazy how they're able to do that, but it's the number one side effect of that medication. I mean, I posted it on social media and everyone who was on it was like, yep. And I'm talking my dreams before what quote unquote normal dreams were, they're kind of abstract, obtuse, maybe some common, sometimes scary, sometimes fun. I'm talking horror, terrifying, I saw my brother's face get melted off in front of a burning house.
Right.
Holy crap, just intense, wake up sobbing.
It's like a bad acid trip or something.
Yeah. I mean, I can't relate to that, but yeah.
I mean, just in theoretically, it's just you can't control how bad this thing that's happening.
Yeah. It was like living in a horror movie every single night. It was awful.
Right. Damn. I feel bad for you there. I actually, if I ever dream, I never remember them, so I basically never have any dreams. I try to live them because I'm, but I couldn't. I would not want that. I would not wish that on anyone either.
It has gotten better. Otherwise, I definitely would have swapped medications. So it's more and more manageable all the time. So the better I'm, really sadly and paradoxically, when I'm in a bad place, my dreams and nightmares are in a bad place. When I'm in a good place, my dreams and nightmares are chill. They're still vivid, but they're chill vivid. It's like a day at the park. I can see all the colors, I can see the trees, but I'm not terrified.
Yeah, there's no ominous tensions lurking around the corner.
At least none that I know of, yeah. So
yeah.
So that's been really good. Is as I do work with my mental health in real life, that side effect doesn't hurt me as bad. So that's been nice. But yeah, it's definitely been interesting to navigate, to say the least.
Right. Well, you were talking about going to the hospital. Like, are you okay with like sharing maybe like your worst episode that you ever had?
Yeah, so I here's what I want to say. So for anyone who's not familiar with the hospitalization process, what I want to say is that it is so stigmatized. I mean, all mental health is, but especially like going to the hospital, I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in a psych ward. Am I crazy? I just felt like crap about myself. And that's a common theme. People don't seek out the help they need because they think it's like, we in the media and in culture, we portray going to an inpatient clinic as like this like horrible thing. And really what it is it was like a chance to get when you're depressed, you want to escape and a break. And it was a chance to get a break from everything going on. Mm-hmm. So you go in, they diagnose your symptoms. And, for me, it was, I just don't want to be here. I don't plan on hurting myself or others, but I'm really struggling and I don't want to be here. That's kind of where I was at. And so they said, okay, we're going to put you in, the moderate symptom, or that they put it in much more professional terms, but you're going to be in this ward. And so for about 2 to 3 weeks, I was, in bed at a certain time, had certain meals, it was basically just, and did like a lot of intensive therapy. So it's kind of like, it was expensive because healthcare in this country is a sham. I mean, I got hit with like a $15,000 bill for that because
Jesus Christ,
nothing makes a depressed person better than like, than a giant bill. But
seems like they really helped you out there.
No, they genuinely did. I mean, medical bills, like, if you say like, hey, I'll settle for like whatever, this is all I have, they'll take whatever. It's a scam system and it's a whole nother topic. But when you're dead, you're dead. You can't, and bills aren't worth dying over.
Right.
They're not at all.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but yeah, no, U.S. healthcare is a sham. So yeah, I mean that's what I ended up doing, and then it took about 2 years to pay off that bill. So, but I'm glad I'm still here. So when I needed a break, when I needed to be safe and not worry about life and not struggle just to stay alive, I was able to go and get the help I needed. So
would you say that those nights like there were like your worst episodes just because you like the fear of being there and everything that was going on around you and not knowing how it was going to unfold was like the epitome of like the worst episode for you?
The 2 lowest points that I can remember directly off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. One was I was in so they were full at the hospital. So they put me in a waiting room, like a hospital ER room, as kind of a waiting, like a hold. So basically I couldn't go anywhere because they don't want me to run away or hurt myself or someone else. But they put me in a hold for like 5 days because they didn't have a bed open up, like a psych bed. And for 5 days, I was just kind of a hospital patient. But like I spent 24/7 just watching TV and sitting in this bed and being able to get up minimally. Mm-hmm. And I was still in a relationship at that time. And I remember, my partner at the time was saying like, hey, can you not post about your struggles on social media? Because I would do that to feel better and also inspire others. It makes me look bad.
Ah,
yeah, and I know they didn't understand what's going on. Like before anyone just gets like, because people are complicated. I knew where they were coming from, but it still hurt so bad that like I had never. That was one of the ugliest tears I ever cried in my life. I felt like a monster. I felt chained to this hospital bed. I felt like I had let down my family. I had let down my partner, who I cared about a lot. I felt like I let down everyone.
Yeah, that's a very vulnerable position to be in to kind of get that, I don't want to say treatment like from them, but that like advice, I should say.
I cried for about 6 hours and just felt like I had failed every single person I knew. That like I was just a burden on everyone. And so that was definitely a time where like I just wanted to end things like right then and there.
Right.
Another time was I was in a different facility, and this one was interesting because it was a much nicer facility, but much worse at treatment. So the amenities were nicer. Like we got our own room instead, and there was like TVs to play video games controlled wise, and there was better food and all this kind of stuff, and like a meditation room and whatever. But at the same time, I would say to the to the psychiatrist there. I said, hey, look, like, he's like, we're going to discharge you. And I said, why? And he goes, we think you're faking your depression.
What?
So
Oh my God.
for context, in mental health, psych wards are at such a premium because we don't invest enough money in mental health. Psych beds are at such a premium that sometimes like people who, are homeless, God forbid they actually get a place to rest. But like, let's say they might not have depression. They'll fake having depression to get a psych bed. And this is like, I know people who work like in the industry, like high up professionals. And so what happens is they'll say, oh, hey, like, we got to discharge you. We got to keep it moving. If you're safe, if we don't think you're a harm to someone else, we got to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, it's cold. I get it. It's a complicated topic. It's hard to talk about, but I understand it. If they think you're safe, they got to open up a bed for someone who might not be safe.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, hospitals, like, there's not enough provisions for them to keep everybody, so it kind of makes sense in that way.
Yeah. And so I told him, I said, look, if you, like, let me go, because what had happened was the World Cup was on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would watch World Cup on the TV. And I'm Arab. I love soccer. I love the World Cup. And when you're depressed, you don't have to be mopey 24/7. You can be happy watching something and then be depressed right after the second that thing goes away.
Right, that's true.
So I was, cheering and happy and watching the soccer game, and they saw that and they thought I was faking my depression, which is dumb. Like, it's dumb. And so they're like, yeah, we think you're faking it. I said, look, if you discharge me, I'm going to go to that bridge. There's a really high bridge, like a block away. I go to that bridge. I'm going to jump off. And they said, well, we're going to discharge you.
Wow, even after that?
Even after that. And
wow.
I cried so hard because I didn't want to, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
And I called my family members and it was a whole thing. But that was probably two of the lowest and hardest points in my life.
And it feels like, I mean, not just on your part, like it feels almost like a momentary lapse of reason for them. Like, why would they still discharge you at that point? Like, if it were me, I'd be like, well, okay, but you gotta like, we'll give you, like, I would make a deal, like, we'll give you this amount of time, but you can't do that. Like, that's probably where I would stem from, but I don't know if that's allowed.
Yeah.
But it just seems like that seems cold to me what they did. If they would still discharge you after that.
I've heard a lot of complaints about that facility. So unfortunately, I sadly think it's more common than it might be. But, issues like that can be systemic, can be fuller than just my perspective on it. So, maybe the reason they're doing that and struggling with it is because they are just facing this like insane shortage of beds. So, it's a multifaceted process. But as it is right now, it's letting down people who really needed the help. So
right, it feels like they're just oversimplifying the struggle, which is terrible. But again, it's like one of the problems in this country that everyone, and I could go over statistics, but I mean it's just a big problem in the country. Let's just put it that way. But I like, out of like all those episodes, obviously that one was a really big low point for you, and I'm sorry to hear that. We've all been there at some point. What advice would you give other people? Like, from being there, surviving it, coming up where you're at now, what advice would you give other people based on your experiences and anything you can do that would link towards, improving their overall health?
Yeah. So the first thing is looking at learning about mental health. So not even just a blanket go to therapy, right? But just learning about mental health and treating it like physical health. If you have a liver that's not working, you're going to go seek help for it. You're going to learn about your liver condition and you're going to seek help for it. Why is that treated as an okay thing? But if I have depression, why do we stigmatize that for ourselves, right? Why do we say that that's not okay? If my brain is having a hard time getting serotonin, if my brain is struggling, why is that seen as such a down thing for whoever than if my liver was or my kidney was? So, learning different techniques, learning different things that can help. I over the course of 8 years have learned a litany of different stuff. Some help more than others, but things like the life wheel, 5 senses, deep breathing, CBT, DBT, exercise, diet, sleep hygiene, having friends, support animals, all these things are so helpful in at least having a framework to learn what the cure is going to look like for you, because every single person is going to have a different response to different stimuli.
Right. It's just like exercising. Everyone's built differently.
Yep. So that's the first thing I would say to someone listening or someone who wants advice. The second thing is to look at your environment. If you are able to change it in a positive way, then definitely do so, because that can massively increase your mental health. If you can't, then recognize that and forgive yourself and be patient.
That's good advice.
Yeah. Well, it kind of ties into my third point, which is, be kind to yourself, forgive yourself. Know that we're all just human and we're all trying to do the best we can. And we all want, for the most part, a peaceful, happy life for ourselves and for others. The way we go about things might be very different and how we view that. But in the general sense, I have a firm belief that all of us are just trying to figure out how to make things work. So forgive yourself, be kind to yourself, allow yourself to fail, learn to fail, and all those things. Those are some pieces of advice that came to the top of my head.
No, I agree with you. I love failing. Failing's one of the greatest things in the world to me. And after learning to fail so often, it just grows on you actually, because you're like, I failed 15 times today. I broke my old record. Yeah. You're breaking records here. And then, the moment you succeed, you're like, I broke my streak, but you succeeded, and what helped you get there was failing. So
yeah.
I've never seen a downside to it. As far as like with you, overall learning from our depression and growing as people, that it's kind of a funny thing now when you look back and you're like, man, what was I so whatever about, whatever the situation was. And then you're like, now I can fail with style. Would you say now, after all of that you're happy now? I don't want to put a 1 to 10 scale on it, but
Yeah. I would say I'll flip it. I would say my depression started at a 7 to 8, was at a pretty strong 9 to 10 for a while, and now's at a 3 to a 4 in the past 2 to 3 years.
That's not bad.
It's a huge improvement.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would say that I'm much happier now, and I'm in a really good place in my life. So, is there still things I struggle with? Yes, but again, progress, not perfection. And yeah, so I feel like I'm doing a lot better.
Yeah, that's a good leap actually too, because I know people who've gone 20 years just stuck in it, and just whatever their vice was or whatever it was, cutting themselves or drinking every night, using drugs or just anything, abusing the people around them just to feel better. And, if in a 2-year span, you can, deduce that down to a 3 or 4, if we did give it a scale, that's something to be proud of. I think so. Granted, given the situation that it could have went worse.
Yeah.
Could have not. It could have went to a 11, and nobody wants that unless it's rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something to be proud of, and that's awesome. I'm very happy for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
But yeah, that's generally, for anyone listening, those are the questions that we try to push forward here. When I was doing them, again, it was just to keep people comfortable and look for, because I've suffered depression, what I felt like would be the 10 questions that I that another person could convey to people openly and comfortably, what might be the top-notch problems occurring with them, and just any way to help them solve it. So I don't know about you, I feel a lot better talking about this. Nabil, did you feel okay here on the show?
Yeah. I felt okay talking about it. I've really processed a lot about it in therapy, so for me, it's not a difficult struggle. And I think you did a good job of kind of presenting it in an approachable manner.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I had a great time being on, and I hope anyone listening can whether they're beginning their journey of figuring this out or an expert in it, so to speak. I hope everyone takes away something positive. And I think, it's really cool that you're doing this and opening up, because I truly believe the more we destigmatize it and treat it like it's physical health, the better off we'll all be in the long run.
Right. And we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. And everyone keep that in mind, like Nabil said. And, I've been to therapy. He's been to therapy. Medication has helped in some cases, all the things. Use your resources kindly and as much as you have to. Even like Nabil said, going to the hospital, it doesn't matter. It's better that you live through a bill than die without ever having to pay it off. So
die without a chance. Yep.
Yeah, just use any means necessary. But I just wanted to close out today with thanking Nabil coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And anyone listening, again, we're going to bring you more of these episodes. Everyone has a different way of handling this and a different general idea of like what they think depression is, even though it's loosely all tied to the same function. So yeah, look forward to that. But yeah, thanks for being on, and everyone listening at home, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, peace out.
Peace.